can go bad. Von Vogel, the brothers Grimm. There was once a forester who went into the forest to hunt, and as he entered, he heard a sound of screaming as if a little child were there. He followed the sound and at last came to a high tree, and at the top of this little child was sitting. For the mother had fallen asleep on the tree with the child, and a bird of prey had seen it in her arms and flown down, snatched it away and set it on the high tree. The forester climbed up, brought the child down, and thought to himself, "You will take him home with you and bring him up with your Lena." He took it home, therefore, and the two children grew up together. And the one which he had found on a tree was called Von Vogel, because a bird had carried it away. Von Vogel and Lena loved each other so dearly that when they did not see each other, they were sad. Now the forester had no cook, who one evening took 2 pails and began to fetch water, and did not go once only, but many times out to the spring. Lena saw this and said, "Listen, old Sana, how are you fetching so much water? If you will never repeat it to anyone, I will tell you why." So Lena said no, she would never repeat it to anyone. And then the cook said, "Early tomorrow morning, when the forester is out hunting, I will heat the water, and when it's boiling in the kettle, I will throw in Von Vogel, and will boil him in it." Early next morning, the forester got up and went out hunting. And when he was gone, the children were still in bed. Then Lena said to Von Vogel, "If you will never leave me, I too will never leave you." Von Vogel said, "Neither now nor ever will I leave you." Then said Lena, "Then will I tell you. Last night, old Sonia carried so many buckets of water into the house that I asked her why she was doing that. And she said I would promise not to tell anyone. And she said that early tomorrow morning, when Father was out hunting, she would set the kettle full of water, throw you into it, and boil you. But we will get up quickly, dress ourselves, and go away together." The two children therefore got up, dressed themselves quickly, and went away. When the water in the kettle was boiling, the cook went into the bedroom to fetch Von Vogel and throw him into it. But when she came in and went to the beds, both the children were gone. Then she was terribly alarmed, and she said to herself, "What shall I say now when the forester comes home and sees the children are gone? They must be followed instantly to get them back again." Then the cook sent 3 servants after them, who were to run and overtake the children. The children, however, were sitting outside the forest, and when they saw from afar the 3 servants running, Lena said to Von Vogel, "Never leave me, and I will never leave you." Von Vogel said, "Neither now nor never." Then said Lena, "Do you become a rose tree, and I the rose upon it?" When the 3 servants came to the forest, nothing was there but a rose tree and one rose on it.
Enemies dropping into
But
the
the
AR.
children were nowhere. Then said they, "There is nothing to be done here." And they went home and told the cook that they had seen nothing in the forest but a little rose bush with one rose on it. Then the old cook scolded and said, "You simpleton! You should have cut the rose bush in 2 and have broken off the rose and brought it home with you. Go, do it at once." They had therefore to go out and look for a second time. The children, however, saw them coming from a distance. Then Lena said, "Von Vogel, never leave me, and I will never leave you." Von Vogel said, "Neither now nor ever." Said Lena, "Then do you become a church, and I'll be the chandelier in it?" So when the 3 servants came, nothing was there but a church, with a chandelier in it. They said therefore to each other, "What can we do here? Let us go home." When they go home, the cook asked if they had not found them. So they said no. They had found nothing but a church, and there was a chandelier in it. And the cook scolded them and said, "You fools, why did you not pull the church to pieces and bring the chandelier home with you?" And now the old cook herself got on her legs and went with 3 servants in pursuit of the children. The children, however, saw from afar that the 3 servants were coming, and the cook waddling after them. Then said Lena, "Von Vogel, never leave me, and I will never leave you." Then said Von Vogel, "Neither now nor ever." Said Lena, "Be a fish pond, and I will be the duck upon it." The cook, however, came up to them, and when she saw the pond, she lay down by it, and was about to clean it up.
stations, we are green to go. Stand by for deployment.
Alright, the valiant little tailor, the brothers Grimm. One summer's morning, a little tailor was sitting on his table by the window. He was in good spirits and sewed with all his might. Then came a peasant woman down the street crying, "Good jams, cheap! Good jams, cheap!" This rang pleasantly in the tailor's ears. He stretched his delicate head out the window and called, "Come up here, dear woman, here you will get rid of your goods." The woman came up to the 3 steps to the tailor with a heavy basket, and he made her unpack all the pots for him. He inspected each one, lifted it up, put his nose to it, and at length said, "The jam seems to me to be good. So weigh me out 4 ounces, dear woman, and if it is a quarter of a pound, that is no consequence." The woman had hoped to find a good sale, gave him what he desired, but went away quite angry and grumbling. "Now, this jam shall be blessed by God," cried the little tailor, "and give me health and strength." So he brought the bread out of the cupboard and cut himself a piece right across the loaf and spread the jam over it. "This won't taste bitter," said he, "but I will just finish the jacket before I take a bite." He laid the bread near him, sewed on, and in his joy made bigger and bigger stitches. In the meantime, the smell of the sweet jam rose to where the flies were sitting in great numbers, and they were attracted and descended on it in hosts. "Hi, who invited you?" said the little tailor, and drove the unbidden guests away. The flies, however, who understood no German, did not be turned away, but came back again in ever-increasing companies. The little tailor at last lost all patience, and drew a piece of cloth from the hole under his work table, and saying, "Wait, and I will give it to you," struck it mercifully on them. When he drew it away and counted, there lay before him no fewer than 7, dead and with legs stretched out. "Are you a fellow of that sort?" said he, and could not help admiring his own bravery. "The whole town shall know of this." And the little tailor hastened to cut himself a girdle, stitched it, and embroidered on it large letters, "7 at one stroke." "What, at the town?" he continued. "The whole world shall hear of it." And his heart wagged with joy like a lamb's tail. The tailor put on the girdle and resolved to go forth into the world, because he thought his workshop was too small for his valor. Before anything which he could take one with him, however, he found nothing but an old cheese, and then he put it on his pocket. In front of the door he observed a bird which had caught itself in the thicket. It had to go into his pocket with its cheese. Now he took to the road boldly, and he was light and nimble. He felt no fatigue. The road led him up a mountain, and when he had reached the highest point of it, there sat a powerful giant looking peacefully about him. The little tailor went bravely up, spoke to him, and said, "Good day, comrade. So you are sitting there overlooking the widespread world. I am just on my way thither, and want to try my luck. Have you an inclination to go with me?" The giant looked contemptuously at the tailor and said, "You ragamuffin, you miserable creature." "Oh, indeed?" answered the little tailor, and unbuttoned his coat and showed the giant the girdle. "There may you read what kind of man I am." The giant read, 7 at one stroke, and thought they that had been man whom the tailor had killed, and began to feel a little respect for the tiny fellow. Nevertheless, he wished to try him first, and took a stone in his hand and squeezed it together so that the water dropped out of it. "Do that likewise," said the giant, "if you have strength. Is that all?" said the tailor. "Let his child play with us," and put his hand into his pocket, brought out the soft cheese, and pressed it until the liquid ran out of it. "Faith," said he, "that was a little better, wasn't it?" The giant did not know what to say, and could not believe it of the little man. Then the giant picked up a stone and threw it so high that the eye could scarcely follow it. "Now, little mite of a man, do that likewise." "Well thrown," said the tailor, "but after all the stone came down to earth again, I will throw you one which will never come back at all. and he put his hand into his pocket, took out the bird, and threw it into the air. The bird, delighted with its liberty, rose, flew away, and did not come back. "How does that shot please you, comrade?" asked the tailor. "You can certainly throw," said the giant, "but now we will see if you are able to carry anything properly."
The fight is ready.
He took the little tailor to a mighty oak tree which lay here felled on the ground, and said, "If you are strong enough, help me to carry the tree out of the forest." "Readily," answered the little man. "Take you the trunk on your shoulders, and I will raise up the branches and twigs. After all, they are the heaviest." The giant took the trunk on his shoulder, but the tailor seated himself on a branch, and the giant, who could not look round, had to carry away the whole tree, and the little tailor into the bargain. He behind was very quite merry and happy, and whistled the song. 3 tailors rode forth from the gate, as if carrying the tree were child's play. The giant, after he had dragged the heavy burden part of the way, could go no further, and cried, "Hark you, I shall have let the tree fall." The tailor sprang nimbly down, seized the tree with both arms as if he had been carrying it, and said to the giant, "You are such a great fellow, and yet cannot even carry the tree?" They went on together, and as they passed a cherry tree, the giant laid hold of the top of the tree where the ripest fruit was hanging, bent it down, gave it into the tailor's hand, and bade him eat. But the little tailor was much too weak to hold the tree. When the giant let it go, it sprang back again, and the tailor was tossed into the air with it. When he had fallen down again without injury, the giant said, "What is this? Have you not strength enough to hold the weak twig?" "There is no lack of strength," answered the little tailor. "Do you think that it could be anything to a man who was struck down 7 at one blow? I leapt over the tree because the huntsmen are shooting down there in the thicket. Jump as I did. If you can't do it," the giant made the intent, but he could not get over the tree, and remained hanging in the branches, so that in this also the tailor kept the upper hand. The giant said, "If you are such a valiant fellow, come with me into our cavern and spend the night with us." This little tailor was willing and followed him. When they went into the cave, other giants were sitting there by the fire, and each of them had a roasted sheep in his hand and was eating it. The little tailor looked around and thought, "It is much more spacious here than in my workshop." The giant showed him a bed, and said he was to lie down in it and sleep. The bed, however, was too big for the little tailor. He did not lie down in it, but crept into a corner. When it was midnight, and the giant thought that the little tailor was lying in a sound sleep, he got up, took a great iron bar, cut through the bed with one blow, and though he had finished off with the grasshopper for good, with the earliest dawn, the giant went through the forest and had quite forgotten the little tailor. And all at once he walked up to them quite merrily and boldly. The giants were terrified, and they were afraid that he would strike them all dead, and ran away in a great hurry. The little tailor went onwards, always following his own pointed nose. After he'd walked for a long time, he came to the courtyard of a royal palace, and as he felt weary, he lay down on the grass and fell asleep. Whilst he lay there, the people came and inspected him on all sides, and read on his girdle, 7 at one stroke. "Ah," said they, "what goes the great warrior want here in the midst of peace? He must be a mighty lord." They went and announced him to the king, and gave it as their opinion what if war would break out. This would be a weighty and useful man, who ought on no account to be allowed to depart. The council pleased the king, and he sent one of his courtiers to the little tailor to offer him military service when he awoke. The ambassador remained standing by the sleeper, waited until he stretched his limbs and opened his eyes, and then conveyed to him his proposal. "For this very reason have I come here," the tailor replied. "I am ready to enter the king's service." He was therefore honorably received, and a special dwelling was assigned him. Nay, the soldiers, however, were set against the little tailor, and wished him 1,000 miles away. "What is to be the end of this?" they said among themselves. If we quarrel with him and he strikes about him, 7 of us will fall at every blow. Not one of us can stand against him. They came therefore to a decision, betook themselves in a body to the king, and begged for their dismissal. We are not prepared, said they, to stay with a man who kills 7 at one stroke. The king was sorry for that. For the sake of one, he would lose all his faithful servants. Wished that he had never set eyes on the tailor, and would willingly have been rid of him again. But he did not venture to give him his dismissal, for he dreaded lest he should strike him and all the people dead, and place himself on the royal throne. He thought about it for a long time, and at last found good counsel. He sent to the little tailor and caused him to be informed that as he was a great warrior, he had one request to make to me. In a forest of the country lived 2 giants, who caused great mischief with the robbing, murdering, ravaging, and burning, and no one could approach them without putting himself in danger of death. If the tailor conquered and killed these 2 giants, he would give him his only daughter to wife, and half of his kingdom as a dowry. Likewise, 100 horsemen should go with him to assist him. They would indeed be a fine thing for a man like me, thought the little tailor. One is not offered a beautiful princess and half a kingdom every day of one's life. Oh yes, he replied, I will soon subdue the giants and do not require the help of 100 horsemen to do it. He who can hit 7 with one blow has no need to be afraid of 2. The little tailor went forth, and the 100 horsemen followed him. When he came to the outskirts of the forest, he said to his followers, just stay waiting here. I alone will soon finish off the giants. Then he bounded into the forest and looked about right and left. After a while he perceived both giants. Pew, 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 pew. They lay sleeping under a tree, and snored as the branches waved up and down. The little tailor, not idle, gathered 2 pockets full of stones, and with these climbed up the tree. Pew, pew. When he was halfway up, he slipped down by a branch until he just above the sleepers, and then let one stone after another fall on the breast of one of the giants. For a long time the giant felt nothing, but at last he awoke, pushed his comrade, and said, Why are you knocking me? You must be dreaming, said the other. I am not knocking you. They laid themselves down to sleep again, and then the tailor threw a stone down on the second. What is the meaning of this? Cried the other. Why are you pelting me? I am not pelting you, answered the first, growling. They disputed about it for a long time. But as they were weary, they let the matter rest, and their eyes closed once more. Nay. The little tailor began his game again, and picked out the biggest stone, and threw it with all his might on the breast of the first giant. That is too bad, cried he, and sprang up like a madman and pushed the companion against the tree until it shook. The other paid him back in the same coin, and they got in such a rage that they tore up trees and belabored each other so long that at last they both fell down dead on the ground. Then the little tailor leapt down. It is a lucky thing, said he, they did not tear up the tree on which I was sitting, or I should have had to sprint onto another like a squirrel. But we tailors are nimble. He drew out his sword and gave each of them a couple of thrusts in the breast, and then went out into the horsemen and said, The work is done. I have finished both of them off, but it was hard work. They tore up trees in their sore need and defended themselves with them, but all that is to no purpose when a man like myself comes, who can kill 7 at one blow. But are you not wounded? Asked horsemen. You need not concern yourself about that, answered the tailor. They have not bent one hair of mine. The horsemen would not believe him and rode into the forest. There they found the giants swimming in their blood, and all the round about lay the torn up trees. The little tailor demanded of the king the promised reward. He, however, repented of his promise and again bethought himself how he could get rid of the hero. But before you receive my daughter and the half of my kingdom, said he to him, you must perform one more heroic deed. In the forest roams a unicorn which does great harm, and you must catch it first. I fear one unicorn still less than 2 giants. 7 at one blow is my kind of affair. He took a rope and an axe with him, went forth into the forest, and again bade these who were sent with him to wait outside. He had not long to seek. The unicorn soon came towards him and rushed directly on the tailor, as if it would gore him with its horn without more ado. Softly, softly, it can't be done as quickly as that, said he, and stood still and waited until the animal was quite close, and then sprang nimbly behind the tree. The unicorn ran against the tree with all its strength and stuck its horn so fast in the trunk that it had not the strength enough to draw it out again, and thus it was caught. Now, I have got the bird, said the tailor, and came out from behind the tree and put the rope round its neck. And then with its axe he hewed the horn out of the tree, and when all was ready he led the best way and took it to the king. The king still would not give him the promised reward, and made a third demand. Before the wedding, the tailor was to catch him a wild boar that made great havoc in the forest, and the huntsmen should give him their help. Willingly, said the tailor. That is child's play. He did not take the huntsmen with him into the forest, and they were well pleased that he did not, for the wild boar had several times received them in such a manner that they had not no inclination to lie in for wait for him.
Target marked. Send it.
When the boar perceived the tailor, it ran on him with foaming mouth and wet tusk, and was about to throw him into the ground. But the hero fled and sprang into a chapel which was near, up to the window at once, and in one bound out again. The boar ran after him, but the tailor ran round outside and shut the door behind it. Then Raging Beast, which was much too heavy and awkward to leap out of the window, was caught. The little tailor called the huntsmen thither, that they might see the prisoner with their own eyes. The hero, however, went to the king, who was now, whether he liked it or not, obliged to keep his promise, and gave his daughter and half of his kingdom. Had he known that it was no warlike hero, but a little tailor was standing before him, it would have gone to his heart still more than it did. The wedding was held with great magnificence and small joy, and out of a tailor a king was made. After some time the young queen heard her husband say in his dreams at night, "Boy, make me the doublet and patch the pantaloons, or else I will wrap the yard measure over your ears."
Nicely done. Your discount is
Then she discovered in what state of life the young lord had been born, and next morning complained of her wrongs to her father, and begged him to help her to get rid of her husband, who was nothing else but a tailor. The king comforted her and said, "Leave your bedroom door open the night, and my servants shall stand outside, and when he has fallen asleep shall go in, bind him, and take him on board a ship which shall carry him into the wide world." The woman was satisfied with this, but the king's armor bearer, who had heard all, was friendly with the young lord, and had informed him the whole plot. "All put a screw into that business," said the little tailor. At night he went to bed with his wife at the usual time. When she thought she had fallen asleep, she got up, opened the door, and then lay down again. The little tailor, who was only pretending to be asleep, began to cry out in a clear voice, "Boy, make me the doublet and patch me the pantaloons, or I will wrap the yard measure over your ears." I smote 7 at one blow. I killed 2 giants, I brought away 1 unicorn, and caught a wild boar. And am I to fear those who are standing outside the room? When these men heard the tailor speaking thus, they were overcome by great dread, and ran as if the wild huntsmen were behind them, and none of them would venture anything further against him. So the little tailor was and remained a king to the end of his life. No, you will not. Nay. Hansel and Gretel, Brother Grimm. Hard by a great forest dwelt a poor woodcutter with his wife and his 2 children. The boy was called Hansel and the girl Gretel. He had little to bite and to break, and once when a great dearth fell on the land, he could no longer procure even daily bread. Now when he thought over this by night in his bed, he tossed about in his anxiety. He groaned and said to his wife, "What has become of us? How are we to feed our poor children when we no longer have anything even for ourselves?" "I'll tell you what, husband," answered the woman. "Early tomorrow morning we will take the children out into the forest to where it is thickest. There we will light a fire for them and give each of them 1 more piece of bread. And then we will go to our work and leave them alone. They will not find the way home again. And we will be rid of them." "No, wife," said the man, "I will not do that. How can I bear to leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals will soon come and tear them into pieces." "Oh, you fool," said she, "then we must all 4 die to hunger. You may as well plane the planks of our coffins." And she left him no peace until he consented. "Nay, but I feel very sorry for the poor children all the same," and said the man. "That black ball you have."
Taking fire.
The 2 children had not been able to sleep for hunger, and had heard what their stepmother had said to their father. Gretel wept bitter tears and said to Hansel, "Now all is over with us." "Be quiet, Gretel," said Hansel. "Do not distress yourself. I will soon find a way to help us." And when the old folks had fallen asleep, he got up and put on his little coat, opened the door below, and crept outside. The moon shone brightly, and the white pebbles which lay in front of the house glittered like real silver pennies. Hansel stooped and stuffed the little pocket of his coat with as many as he could get in. Then he went back and said to Gretel, "Be comforted, dear little sister, and sleep in peace. Nay, God will not forsake us." And he lay down in his bed. When day dawned, but before the sun had risen, the woman came and awoke the 2 children, saying, "Get up, you sluggards. We are going into the forest to fetch wood." She gave each a little piece of bread and said, "There is something for your dinner, but do not eat it up before then, for you will get nothing else." Gretel took the bread under her apron, as Hansel had the pebbles in his pocket. Then they all set out together on the way to the forest. When they had walked a short time, Hansel stood still and peeped back at the house, and did so again and again. His father said, "Hansel, what are you looking at there and staying behind for? Pay attention, and do not forget how to use your legs." "Ah, father," said Hansel, "I am looking at my little white cat, which is sitting up on the roof and wants to say goodbye to me." The wife said, "Fool, that is not your little cat. That is the morning sun which is shining on the chimneys." Hansel, however, had not been looking back at the cat, but had been constantly throwing one of the white pebble stones out of his pocket on the road. When they had reached the middle of the forest, the father said, "Now, children, pile up some wood, and I will light a fire that you may not be cold." Hansel and Gretel gathered brushwood together as high as a little hill. The brushwood was lighted. When the flames were burning very high, the woman said, "Now, children, lay yourselves down by the fire and rest. We will go into the forest and cut some wood. When we have done, we will come back and fetch you away." Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire, and when noon came, each ate a little piece of bread. And as they heard the strokes of wood axe, nay, they believed that their little father was near. It was not like the axe, however, but a branch which he had fastened to a tree which the wind was blowing backwards and forwards. And as they had been sitting such a long time, their eyes closed with fatigue, and they fell fast asleep. When at last they awoke, it was already dark night. Gretel began to cry and said, "How will we get out of the forest now?" But Hansel comforted her and said, "Just wait a little until the moon has risen, and then we will soon find the way." And when the full moon had risen, Hansel took his little sister by the hand and followed the pebbles which shone like newly coined silver pieces, and showed them the way. They walked the whole night long, and by the break of day came once more to the father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it and saw that it was Hansel and Gretel, she said, "You naughty children, why have you slept so long in the forest? We thought you were coming back at all." The father, however, rejoiced, for it had cut him into the heart to leave them behind alone. Not long afterwards there was once more great dearth throughout the land, and the children heard their mother saying at night to their father, "Everything is eaten again. We have one half loaf left, and this is the end. The children must go. We will take them further into the woods, so that they will not find their way out again. There is no other means of saving ourselves." The man's heart was heavy, and he thought it would be better for you to share the last mouthful with your children. The woman, however, would listen to nothing that he had to say, but scolded and reproached him. He who says A must say B. Likewise, and as he had yielded the first time, he had to do so a second time also. The children, however, were still awake and had heard their conversation. When the old folks were asleep, Hansel again got up and wanted to go out and pick up pebbles as he had done before. But the woman had locked the door, and Hansel could not get out. Nevertheless, he comforted his little sister and said, "Do not cry, Gretel. Go to sleep quietly. The good God will help us." Early in the morning came a woman and took the children out of the bed. Their piece of bread was given to them, but it was still smaller than the time before. On the way into the forest, Hansel crumbled his in his pocket, and often stood still and threw a morsel on the ground. "Hansel, why do you stop and look round?" said the father. "Go on. I am looking back at my little pigeon, which is sitting on the roof and wants to say goodbye to me," answered Hansel. "Fool," said the woman, "that is not your little pigeon. That is the morning sun that is shining on the chimney." Hansel, however, little by little, threw all the crumbs on the path. The woman led the children still deeper into the forest, where they had never in their lives been before. Then a great fire was again made, and the mother said, "Just sit there, you children, and when you are tired you must sleep a little. We are going into the forest to cut wood, and in the evening we are done, we will come and fetch you away." When it was noon, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel, who had scattered his by the way. Then they fell asleep, and evening passed, but no one came to the poor children. They did not wake until it was dark night, and Hansel comforted his little sister and said, "Just wait, Gretel, until the moon rises, and then we shall see the crumbs of bread which I have strewn about. They will show us our way home again." When the moon came, they set out, but they found no crumbs, for they many thousands of birds which fly about in the woods and fields had picked them all up. Hansel said to Gretel, "We shall soon find the way," but they did not find it. They walked the whole night and all the next day too, from morning till evening, but they did not get out of the forest, and were very hungry, for they had nothing to eat but 2 or 3 berries which grew on the ground. And as they were so weary that their legs would carry them no longer, they lay down beneath the tree and fell asleep. It was now 3 mornings since they had left their father's house. They began to walk again, but they always came deeper into the forest, and if help did not come soon, they must die of hunger and weariness. When it was midday, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a bough, which sang so delightfully that they stood still and listened to it. And when its song was over, it spread its wings and flew away before them, and they followed it until they reached a little house, on the roof of which it alighted. And when they approached the little house, they saw it was built of bread and covered with cakes, but that the windows were of clear sugar. "We will set to work on that," said Hansel, "and have a good meal. I will eat a bit of the roof, and you, Gretel, can eat some of the window. It will taste sweet." Hansel reached up above and brake off a little of the roof to try how it tasted, and Gretel leant against the window and nibbled at the panes. Then a soft voice cried from the parlor, "Nibble, nibble, gnaw, who is nibbling at my little house?" The children answered, the wind, the heavy-born wind." and went on eating without disturbing themselves. Hansel, who liked the taste of the roof, tore down a great piece of it, and Gretel pushed out the whole of the round window pane, sat down, and enjoyed herself with it. Suddenly the door opened, and a woman as old as the hills, who supported herself on crutches, came creeping out. Hansel and Gretel were so terribly frightened that they let fall what they had in their hands. The old woman, however, nodded her head and said, "Oh, you dear children, who has brought you here? Do come in and stay with me. No harm shall happen to you." She took them both by the hand and led them into her little house. The good food was set before them, milk and pancakes with sugar, apples, and nuts. Afterwards, 2 pretty little beds were covered with clean white linen, and Hansel and Gretel lay down in them and thought they were in heaven. The old woman had only pretended to be so kind. She was in reality a wicked witch, who lay in wait for children, and had only built the little house of bread in order to entice them there. When a child fell into her power, she killed it, cooked and ate it, and that was a feast day with her. Witches have red eyes and cannot see far, but they have a keen scent like the beast, and are aware when human beings draw near. When Hansel and Gretel came into her neighborhood, she laughed with malice and said mockingly, "I have them. They shall not escape me again." Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she was already up, and when she saw both of them sleeping and looking so pretty with their plump and rosy cheeks, she muttered to herself, "That will be a dainty mouthful." Then she seized Hansel with her shriveled hand, carried him to a little stable, and locked him in behind a grated door. Scream as he might, it would not help him. Then she went to Gretel, took her till she awoke and cried, "Get up, lazy thing, fetch some water and cook something good for your brother. He's in the stable outside and is to be made fat. When he is fat, I will eat him." Gretel began to weep bitterly, but it was all in vain, for she was forced to do what the wicked witch commanded. And now the best food was cooked for poor Hansel, but Gretel got nothing but crab shells. Every morning the woman crept to the little stable and cried, "Hansel, stretch out your finger that I may feel that you will soon be fat." Hansel, however, stretched out a little bone to her, and the old woman, who had dim eyes, could not see it, and thought it was Hansel's finger, and was astonished that there was no way of fattening him. When 4 weeks had gone by, and Hansel still remained thin, she was seized with impatience, and would not wait any longer. "Now then, Gretel," she cried to the girl, "stir yourself, and bring some water. Let Hansel be fat or lean. Tomorrow I will kill him and cook him." How the poor little sister did lament when she had to fetch her the water, and how her tears did flow down her cheeks. "Dear God, do help us," she cried. "If the wild beasts to the forest had devoured us, we should at any rate have died together." "Just keep your noise to yourself," said the old woman. "It won't help you at all." Early in the morning, Gretel had to go out and hang up the cauldron with the water, and light the fire. "Who will bake first?" said the old woman. "I already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel out into the oven, from which flames of fire were already darting, creeping in. "Creep in," said the witch, "and see if it is properly heated, so that we can put the bread in." And once Gretel was inside, she intended to shut the oven and let her bake in it, and then she would eat her too. But Gretel saw what she had in mind, and said, "I do not know how I am to do it. How do I get in?" "Silly goose," said the old woman. "The door is big enough, just look. I can get in myself." And she crept up and thrust her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a push and drove her fat into it, and shut the iron door and fastened the bolt. Then she began to howl quite horribly, but Gretel ran away, and the godless witch was miserably burned to death. Gretel, however, ran like lightning to Hansel, opened his little stable, and cried, "Hansel, we are saved! The old witch is dead!" The Hansel sprang like a bird from its cage when the door is opened. How they did rejoice and embrace each other, dance about to kiss each other, and as they had no longer the need to fear her, they went into the witch's house, and in every corner there stood chests full of pearls and jewels. "These are far better than pebbles," said Hansel, and thrust into his pocket whatever could he got in. And Gretel said, "I too will take something home with me," and filled her pinafore full. "But now we must be off," said Hansel, "that we may get out of the witch's forest." When they had walked for 2 hours, they came to a great stretch of water. "We cannot cross," said Hansel. "I see no footplank and no bridge, and there is also no ferry," answered Gretel, "but a white duck is swimming there. If I ask her, she will help us over." Then she cried, little duck, dost thou see? Hansel and Gretel are waiting for thee. There's never a plank on bridge in sight to take us across on thy back so white."
Your objective's simple. Eliminate all
The duck
bounty
came to
targets.
him, and Hansel seated himself on his back and told his sister to sit by him. "No," replied Gretel, "that will be too heavy for the little duck. She shall take us across, one after the other." The good little duck did so, and when they were once safely across and walked for a short time, the forest seemed to be more and more familiar to them, and at length they saw from afar their father's house. Then they began to run, rushed into the parlor, and threw themselves round their father's neck. The man had not known happy
Okay,
hours
your way.
since he had left the children in the forest. The woman, however, was dead. Gretel emptied her pinafore until pearls and precious stones ran about the room, and Hansel threw one handful after another out of his pocket to add to them. Then all anxiety was at an end, and they lived together in perfect happiness. My tale is done. There runs the mouse. Whosoever catches it may make himself a big fur cap out of it.
Watch it!
Your squad mates in the gulag. They'll fight for a chance to redeploy. Enemy UAV overhead. Hostile UAV in the area. Primary objective complete. All targets eliminated. Forget it. Your squad made it to the safe zone. Gas is closing in. Squad mate has been cleared for redeployment.
They're trying to thin out the weeds is what it is. Okay, the robber bridegroom. The Brothers Grimm Fairy Tales. There was once a miller who had one beautiful daughter, and as she was grown up, he was anxious that she would be well married and provided for. He said to himself, "I will give her to the first suitable man who comes and asks for her hand." Not long after a suitor appeared, and as he appeared to be very rich, and the miller could see nothing in him with which to find fault, he betrothed his daughter to him. But the girl did not care for the man as a girl ought to care for her betrothed husband. She did not feel that she could trust him, and she could not look at him nor think of him without an inward shudder. One day he said to her, "You have not yet paid me a visit. Although we have been betrothed for some time, I do not know where your house is." She answered, "My house is out there in the dark forest." He said she tried to excuse herself by saying that she would not be able to find the way thither. Her betrothed only replied, "You must come and see me next Sunday. I have already invited guests for that day, and that she may not mistake the way, I will strew ashes along the path." When Sunday came and it was time for the girls to start, a feeling of dread came over her which she could not explain, and that she might be able to find her path again, she filled her pockets and peas and lentils to sprinkle on the ground as she went along. On reaching the entrance to the forest, she found the path strewed with ashes, and these she followed, throwing down some peas on either side of her at every step she took. She walked the whole day until she came to the deepest, darkest part of the forest. There she saw a lonely house looking so grim and mysterious that it did not please her at all. She stepped inside, but not a soul was to be seen, and a great silence reigned throughout. Suddenly a voice cried, turn back, young maiden fair, linger not in his murder's lair." The girl looked up and saw that the voice came from a bird hanging in a cage on the wall. Again it cried, turn back, young maiden fair, linger not in this murder's lair." The girl passed on, going from room to room of the house, but they were all empty, and still she saw no one. At last she came to the cellar, and there sat a very, very old woman, who could not keep her head from shaking. "Can you tell me," asked the girl, "if my betrothed husband lives here?" "Ah, you poor child," answered the old woman, "what a place for you to come to. This is a murderer's den. You think yourself a promised bride, that your marriage will soon take place, but it is with death that you will keep your marriage feast. Look, do you see that large cauldron of water which I am obliged to keep on the fire? As soon as they have you in their power, they will kill you without mercy, and cook and eat you, for they are eaters of men. If I didn't take pity on you to save you, you would be lost." Thereupon the old woman led her behind a large cask, which quite hid her from view. "Keep as still as a mouse," she said. "Do not move or speak, or it will be all over with you. Tonight, when the robbers are all asleep, we will flee together. I have long been waiting for an opportunity to escape." The words were hardly out of her mouth when the godless crew returned, dragging a young girl along with them. They were all drunk and paid no heed of her cries and lamentations. They gave her wine to drink, 3 glasses full, one of white wine, one of red, and one of yellow, and with that her heart gave way, and she died. Then they tore of her dainty clothing, laid her on a table, and cut her beautifully body into pieces, and sprinkled salt upon it. The poor betrothed girl crouched trembling and shuddering behind the cask, for she saw what a terrible fate had been intended for her by the robbers. One of them now noticed a gold ring still remaining on the finger of the young girl, and as he could not draw it off easily, he took a hatchet and cut off the finger, but the finger sprang into the air and fell behind the cask into the lap of the girl who was hiding there. The robber took a light and began looking for it, but he could not find it. "Have you looked behind the large cask?" said one of the others. But the old woman called out, "Come and eat your suppers, and let this thing be till tomorrow. The finger won't run away." "The old woman is right," said the robbers, and they ceased looking for the finger and sat down. It sounds like Resident Evil 7. The old woman then mixed the sleeping draught with their wine, and before long they were all lying on the floor of the cellar, fast asleep and snoring. As soon as the girl was assured of this, she came from behind the cask. She was obliged to step over the bodies of the sleepers who were lying close together, and every moment she was filled with renewed dread lest she could awaken them. But God helped her so that she passed safely over them, and then she and the old woman went upstairs, opened the door, and hastened as fast as they could from the murderer's den. They found the ashes scattered by the wind, but the peas and lentils had sprouted and grown sufficiently above the ground to guide them to the moonlight along the path. All night long they walked, and it was morning before they reached the mill. Then the girl told her father all that had happened. The day came that had been fixed for the marriage. The bridegroom arrived, and also a large company of guests, for the miller had taken care to invite all his friends and relations. As they sat at the feast, each guest in turn was asked to tell a tale. The bride sat still and did not say a word. "And you, my love," said the bridegroom, turning to her, "is there no tale you know? Tell us something." "I will tell you a dream, then," said the bride. "I went alone through a forest and came at last to a house not a soul could find within, but a bird that was hanging in a cage on the wall cried, 'Turn back, young maidens fair, and linger not in this murderer's lair.' And again a second time it said these words, 'My darling, this is only a dream.'" That was by accident.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
I went on through the house from room to room, but they were all empty and everything was so grim and mysterious. At last I went down to the cellar, and near sat a very, very old woman, who could not keep her head still. I asked if my betrothed lived here, and she answered, "Oh, you poor child, you are come to a murderer's den. Your betrothed does indeed live here, but he will kill you without mercy, and afterwards cook and eat you. My darling, this is only a dream." The old woman hid me behind a large cask, and scarcely had she done it when the robbers returned home, dragging a young girl along with them. They gave her 3 kinds of wine to drink, white, red, and yellow, and with that she died. My darling, this is only a dream. Then they tore off her dainty clothing and cut her beautiful body into pieces and sprinkled salt upon it. My darling, this is only a dream. And one of the robbers saw that there was a gold ring still left on her finger, and as it was difficult to draw off, he took a hatchet and cut off her finger. But the finger sprang into the air and fell behind the great cask into my lap. And here is the finger with the ring. And with these words the bride drew forth the finger and shewed it to the assembled guests. The bridegroom, who during the recital had grown deadly pale, up and tried to escape, but the guests seized him and held him fast. They delivered him up to justice, and he and all his murderous band were condemned to death for their wicked deeds. Okay, I'm going to move forward with the Brothers Grimm. It's been a while. So we're at the mouse, the bird, and the sausage.
Broke their armor.
Once upon a time, a mouse, a bird, and a sausage entered into partnership and set up house together. For a long time all went well. They lived in great comfort and prospered so far as to be able to add considerable to their story. The bird's duty was to fly daily into the wood and bring in fuel. The mouse fetched the water, and the sausage saw to the cooking. When people are too well off, they always begin in long for something new. And so it came to pass that the bird, while out one day, met a fellow bird, to whom he boastfully expatiated on the excellence of the household arrangements. But the other bird sneered at him for being a poor simpleton, who did all the hard work, while the other 2 stayed at home and had a good time of it. For when the mouse had made the fire and fetched in the water, she could retire into her little room and rest until it was time to set the table. The sausage had only to watch the pot to see if the food was properly cooked, and when it was near dinner time, he just threw himself into the broth, or rolled in and out among the vegetables 3 or 4 times, and there they were, buttered and salted and ready to be served. Then when the bird came home and had laid aside his burden, they sat down to table, and when they had finished their meal, they could sleep their fill till the following morning. And that was really a very delightful life. Influenced by those remarks, the bird next morning refused to bring in the wood, telling others that he had been their servant long enough and had been a fool into the bargain, and that it was now time to make a change, and to try some other way of arranging the work. Beg and pray that the mouse and sausage might, it was no use. The bird remained master of the situation, and the venture had to be made. They therefore drew lots, and it fell to the sausage to bring in the wood, to the mouse to cook, and to the bird to fetch the water. And now what happened? The sausage started in search of wood, the bird made the fire, and the mouse put on the pot. And then these 2 waited till the sausage returned for good for the fellow day, but the sausage remained so long that they became uneasy, and the bird flew out to meet him. He had not flown far, however, when he came across a dog who, having met the sausage, had regarded him as its legitimate booty, and so seized and swallowed him. The bird complained to the dog of this barefaced robbery, but nothing he said was in any avail. For the dog answered that he found false credentials on the sausage, and that was the reason his life had been forfeited. He picked up the wood and flew sadly home, and told the mouse all he had seen and heard. They were both very unhappy, but agreed to make the best of things, and to remain with one another. So now the bird set the table, and the mouse looked after the food, and wishing to prepare it in the same way as the sausage, by rolling in and amount the vegetables, the salt and butter them, she jumped into the pot. But she stopped short long before she reached the bottom, having already parted not only with its skin and hair, but also its life. Presently the bird came in and wanted to serve up the dinner, but he could nowhere to see the cook. In his alarm and flurry he threw the wood here and there about the floor, called and searched, but no cook was to be found. Then some of the wood, but had carelessly thrown down, caught fire and began to blaze. The bird hastens to fetch some water, but his pail fell into the well, and he after it. As he was unable to recover himself, he was drowned. Okay, Mother Hole, the Brothers Grimm Fairy Tales. Mother Holly. Once upon a time there was a widow who had 2 daughters. One of them was beautiful and industrious, the other ugly and lazy. The mother, however, loved the ugly and lazy one best, because she was her own daughter, and so the other, who was only her stepdaughter, was made to do all the work of the house, and was quite the Cinderella of the family. Her stepmother sent her out every day to sit by the well in the high road, there to spin until she made her fingers bleed. Now it chanced one day that some blood fell on to the spindle, and as the girl stopped over the well to wash it off, the spindle suddenly sprang out of her hand and fell into the well. She ran home crying to tell of her misfortune, but her stepmother spoke harshly to her, and after giving her a violent scolding, said unkindly, "As you have let out the spindle fall into the well, you may go yourself and fetch it out." The girl went back to the well, not knowing what to do, and at last, in her distress, she jumped into the water after the spindle. She remembered nothing more until she awoke and found herself in a beautiful meadow full of sunshine and with countless flowers blooming in every direction. She walked over the meadow, and presently she came upon a baker's oven full of bread, and the loaves cried out at her, take us out, or alas, we shall be burnt to a cinder. We were baked through long ago." So she took the bread shovel and drew them all out. She went on a little further, till she came to a tree full of apples. Shake me, I pray," cried the tree, "my apples one and all are ripe." So she shook the tree, and the apples came falling down upon her like rain. But she continued shaking until there was not a single apple left upon it. Then she carefully gathered the apples together in a heap and walked on again. The next thing she came to was a little house, and there she saw an old woman looking out with such large teeth that she was terrified and turned to run away. But the old woman called after her, "What are you afraid of, dear child?
Headed to the war zone.
Stay with me if you will do the work of my house properly for me. I will make you very happy. You must be very careful, however, to make my bed in the right way, for I wish you always to shake it thoroughly, so that the feathers fly about. Then they say down there in the world that it's snowing, for I am Mother Holly." The old woman spoke so kindly that the girl summoned up courage and breathed into her servant. She took care to do everything according to the old woman's bidding, and every time she made the bed she shook it with all her might, so that the feathers flew about like so many snowflakes. The old woman was as good as her word. She never spoke angrily to her, and gave her roast and boiled meats every day. So she stayed on with Mother Holly for some time, and then she began to grow unhappy. She could not at first tell why she felt sad, but she became conscious at last of great longing to go home. Then she knew she was homesick, although she was 1,000 times better off with Mother Holly than with her mother and sister. After waiting a while, she went to Mother Holly and said, "I am so homesick that I cannot stay with you any longer, for although I am happy here, I must return to my own people." Then Mother Holly said, "I am pleased that you should want to go back to your own people, and as you have served me as well and faithfully, I will take you home myself." Thereupon she led the girl by the hand up a broad gateway. The gate was open, and as the girl passed through, a shower of gold fell upon her, and the gold clung to her, so that she was covered with it from her head to foot. "That is a reward for your industry," said Mother Holly, and as she spoke she handed her a spindle which she had dropped into the well. The gate went then closed, and the girl found herself back in the old world, close to her mother's house. As she entered the courtyard, the cock was perched in the well, and called out, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, your golden daughter's come back to you." Then she went to her mother and sister, and as she was so richly covered with gold, they gave her a warm welcome. She related to them all that had happened, and when the mother heard how she had come by her great riches, she thought she would like her ugly,
Prep time's over.
lazy daughter to go try her fortune. So she made the sister go and sit by the well and spin, and the girl pricked her finger and thrust her hand into a thorn bush so that she might drop some blood onto the spindle. Then she threw it into the well and jumped in herself. Like her sister, she awoke in the beautiful meadow and walked over it till she came to the oven. Take us out, or alas, we shall be burnt to a cinder. We were baked through long ago," cried the loaves as before. But the lazy girl answered, "Do you think I am going to dirty my hands for you?" and walked on. Presently she came to the apple tree. Shake me, I pray. My apples one and all are ripe," it cried. But she only answered, A nice thing to ask me to do, but one of the apples might fall on my head and pass on. At last, she came to Mother Holly's house, and as she had heard all about the large teeth from his sister, she was not afraid of them, and engaged herself without delay to the old woman. The first day she was very obedient and industrious, and exerted herself to please Mother Holly, for she thought of the gold she should get in return. The next day, however, she began to dawdle over her work, and the third day she was more idle still. Then she began to lie in bed in the mornings and refused to get up. Worse still, she neglected to make the old woman's bed properly, and forget to shake it so that the feathers might fly about. So Mother Holly very soon got tired of her and told her she might go. The lazy girl was delighted at this, and thought to herself, "The gold will soon be mine." Mother Holly led her as she had led her sister, as the broad gateway, but as she was passing through, instead of the shower of gold, a great bucketful of pitch came pouring over her. "That is in return for your services," said the old woman, and she shut the gate. So the lazy girl had to go home, covered with pitch, and the cock on the well called out as she saw her, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, your daughter come back to you." Try what she would, she could not get the pitch off, and it stuck to her as long as she lived. Alright, Little Red Cap, Little Red Riding Hood by the Brothers Grimm Fairytales. Once upon a time, there was a dear little girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her, but most of all by her grandmother, and there was nothing that she would not have given to the child. Once she gave her a little cap of red velvet, which suited her so well that she would never wear anything else. So she was always called Little Red Cap. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Cap, here is a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She is a little ill and weak, and they will do her good. Set out before it gets hot, and when you are going, walk nicely and quietly, and do not run off to the path, or you may fall and break the bottle, and then your grandmother will get nothing. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say good morning, and don't peep into every corner before you do it." "I will take great care," said Little Red Cap to her mother, and gave her hand on it. The grandmother lived out in the wood, half a league from the village, and just as Little Red Cap entered the wood, a wolf met her. Red Cap did not know what a wicked creature he was, and was not at all afraid of him. "Good day, Little Red Cap," said he. "Thank you kindly, wolf. Whither away so early, Little Red Cap?" "To my grandmother's." "What have you got in your apron?" "Cake and wine. Yesterday was baking day. The poor sick grandmother's to have something good to make her stronger." "Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Cap?" "A good quarter of a league further on in the wood. Her house stands under the 3 large oak trees. The nut trees are just below. You surely must know it," replied Little Red Cap. The wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young creature! What a nice plump mouthful! She will be better eat than the old woman. I must act craftily, so as to catch both." So he walked for a short time by the side of Little Red Cap, and then he said, "See, Little Red Cap, how pretty the flowers are about here. Why do you not look around? I believe, too, that you do not hear how sweet the little birds are singing. You walk gravely along as if you were going to school, while everything else out here in the wood is merry." Little Red Cap raised her eyes, and when she saw the sunbeams dancing here and there through the trees and pretty flowers growing everywhere, she thought, "Suppose I take grandmother a fresh nosegay, that would please her too. It is so early in the day that I shall still get there in good time." And so she ran from the path into the wood to look for flowers, and whenever she had picked one, she fancied that she saw a still prettier one further on, and ran after it, and so got deeper and deeper into the wood. Meanwhile the wolf ran straight to the grandmother's house and knocked at the door. "Who is there?" "Little Red Cap," replied the wolf. "She's bringing cake and wine. Open the door." "Lift the latch," called out the grandmother. "I am too weak and cannot get up." The wolf lifted the latch. The door sprang open, and without saying a word, he went straight to the grandmother's bed and devoured her. Then he put on her clothes, dressed himself in her cap, laid himself in bed, and drew the curtains. Little Redcap, however, had been running about picking flowers, and when she had gathered so many that she could carry no more, she remembered her grandmother and set out on the way to her. She was surprised to find the cottage door standing open, and when she went into the room, she had such a strange feeling that she'd said to herself, "Oh dear, how uneasy I feel today, and at other times I like being with grandmother so much." She called out, "Good morning," but received no answer, so she went to the bed and drew back the curtains. There lay her grandmother with her cap pulled far over her face, and looked very strange. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have!" "The better to hear you with, my child," was the reply. "But grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said. "The better to see you with, my dear." But grandmother, what large hands you have." "The better to hug you with." "Oh, but grandmother, what a terrible big mouth you have." "The better to eat you with." And scarcely had the wolf said this, and with one bound he was out of the bed and swallowed up Redcap. When the wolf had appeased his appetite, he laid down again in his bed, fell asleep, and began to snore very loud. The huntsman was just passing the house and thought to himself, "How the old woman is snoring! I must just see if she wants anything." So he went into the room, and when he came to his bed, he saw that the wolf was lying in it. "Do I find you here, you old sinner?" said he. "I have long sought you." Then just as he was going to fire at him, it occurred to him that the wolf might have devoured the grandmother, and that she might still be saved. So he did not fire, but took a pair of scissors and began to cut open the stomach of the sleeping wolf. When he had made 2 snips, he saw the little red cap shining, and then he made 2 snips more, and the little girl sprang out crying, "Ah, how frightened I had been! How dark it was inside the wolf!" And after that the aged grandmother came out alive also, but scarcely able to breathe. Redcap, however, quickly fetched great stones with which they filled the wolf's belly, and when he awoke he wanted to run away, but the stones were so heavy that he had collapsed at once and fell dead. Then all 3 were delighted. The huntsman drew up the wolf's skin and went home with it. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine which Redcap had brought, and revived, but Redcap thought to herself, "As long as I live, I will never by myself leave the path to run into the wood, when my mother has forbidden me to do so." It also related that once when Redcap was again taking cakes to the old grandmother, another wolf spoke to her, and tried to entice her from the path. Redcap, however, was on her guard, and went straight forward on her way, and told her grandmother she had met with Wolf, and that she had said good morning to her. But with such a wicked look in his eyes that if they had not been on the public road, she was certain he would have eaten her up. "Well," said the grandmother, "we will shut the door that he may not come in." Soon afterwards the wolf knocked and cried, "Open the door, grandmother, I am little Redcap, and am bringing you some cakes." But they did not speak or open the door. So the graybeard stole twice or thrice round the house, and at last jumped on the roof, intending to wait until Redcap went home in the evening, and then to steal after her and devour her into the darkness. But the grandmother saw what was in his thoughts. In front of the house was a great stone trough, so she said to the child, "Take the pail, Redcap. I made some sausages yesterday, so carry the water in which I boiled them to the trough." Redcap carried until the great trough was quite full. Then the smell of the sausage reached the wolf, and he sniffed and peeped down, and at last stretched out his neck so far that he could no longer keep his footing and began to slip, and slipped down from the roof straight into the great trough and was drowned. But Redcap went jealously home, and no one ever did anything to harm her again.